And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. A few things going on, of course, getting ready for the holidays. Big movement on Capitol Hill yesterday. It got very heated. Also, we'll hear from Representative Dorothy Moon. In addition to that, it is time for Star Wars. How many people are excited? George Lucas says it's going to be the biggest, best ever.
Untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special. Something.
And there we have it. So people are, still dark outside. People are kind of looking over their shoulder. Anyway, I do want to thank a young man who sent me an email today concerning taxes in the city of Boise. Kevin, when you vote in Californians to run your city, then you get Californian taxes. And what we're talking about is a story at KIDOTalkRadio.com where you have the city of Boise deciding they're going to charge, beginning February 1st, they're going to charge for Saturday parking. Can't wait for the summer and the farmers market and everything else. Now, again, when people start boozing it up and having a great time, I don't know if they're going to get a ticket as well. But, again, sadly, what's the answer to everything? Taxes, taxes, taxes. It's really crazy. Also yesterday, it got heated on Capitol Hill.
Republican Trey Gowdy said messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page are evidence of bias in the Russia probe.
He said Hillary Clinton should win $100 million to nothing.
House Judiciary Committee ranking Democrat Jerry Nadler doesn't believe Strzok and Page did anything wrong.
Department regulations expressly permit that sort of private communication.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein said he's awaiting a report from the Inspector General and vowed there will be no bias reflected in any action taken by Robert Mueller's office. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Funny, they didn't need an Inspector General when it came to the Russian probe. It was all about an independent prosecutor. Talk about double standards. Well, Rosenstein, he's an Obama guy, by the way, anyway.
I don't know exactly what the president meant by that, Congressman. The special counsel's investigation is not a witch hunt.
We are now beginning to better understand the magnitude of this insider bias on Mr. Mueller's team.
And we'll have more on that in a minute. Joining us now, I guess you'd say she's visiting the low country. Representative Dorothy Moon joining us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Morning, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad. So how do you like... And again, don't mean to be offensive here. How do you like being in civilization here, away from the ruggedness of the mountain and such?
Well, believe it or not, I actually went out and got some Christmas shopping done yesterday. So economic development in Ada County is thriving.
Yes, we appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, there's a big issue that you want to discuss that impacts all Idahoans, whether you're Republican or whether you're Democrat. We'll talk about some other issues as well. And this has to do with the lands and particularly the forests.
Yes. Yeah, you know, and I think there's some far-reaching implications coming out up in the near future if we don't start getting involved. As you know, I live east of Stanley up the Yankee Fork, and my district consists of pretty much Lemhi County, Custer, Boise, Gem, and Valley, pretty much the entire center part of the state, and a lot of it's rural. Well, over in the Salmon Challis Forest, a process began in updating their forest plan. And citizen involvement is required by law to help contribute to all the aspects of it. And after I got out of session and did some legislative updates around my district, I started hearing that this plan process was, there was a committee being formed called a collaborative, and I went to a couple of the meetings and tried to get on it because I do gold mine in the summer with my husband, and we're geologist background. And
now, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. So you gold mine in the summer.
Yes.
Now let me ask you the stupid bottom-feeding media question. Successful, or are there gold in them yonder hills? Or?
I can tell you. I can't tell you
well,
that.
You're okay. Fair enough.
But let's put it this way. There's still a lot of resources in this state.
Sure.
All right. Okay, so we are blessed with a lot of resources. And that's why it is so important that people get involved in this planning process. So in the middle part of the summer, I found out about this collaborative that was being formed, and I did try to get on it. I know of other people in recreation and ranching that tried to get on it, and they weren't allowed. And I'm sure there's some great representatives from the environmental groups, and they're all on there, but there weren't any regular folks. And I thought, well, how come we don't have regular folks on here in these different industries of logging and mining and ranching? And to my chagrin, after talking to the supervisor, talking to the regional forester, I eventually got a hold of Chief Tony Took, our new chief of the forest that Secretary Perdue put into place, to, tell him that I see some discrepancies here as far as the input on this plan. Because I truly believe that the people who live in the forest, around the forest, and a lot of Idahoans use that forest as well as nationally, but I think we're the ones who are impacted by the fires that we have every year, the water running dirty, the dead animals. And a good example of that, even after the Pioneer Fire. I remember when I was going around meeting with folks in Garden Valley or up in McCall and heading home at night, you would see deer literally walking single file next to the highway heading east toward Custer County from Boise County. So as a result, we had a lot of archery hunters come out, which was great because all the deer were over in Custer County as a result of that fire. So we're the ones who deal with the fluctuations, the movement of the wildlife, and again, the environment changing for that wildlife and the smoke and so forth. So I truly believe we need to have a lot more input, and then also look at the socioeconomic situation, loss of revenues, people don't come out, and we have the Muzzy Braun concert over in Chalice every year, and it's a great event, brings in a lot of money for the area and for the citizens with, homes to put out for rent. And the fires have almost hurt it every year, but there's some diehard people who don't care about the smoke and will show up for it. So I truly think that as locals, we need to have more input in this planning process.
Representative Dorothy Moon joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. So how does this impact folks that, may use the woods in the summer? They do it occasionally. They're not like the people that, like my father-in-law, Papa Jerry, that, he hunts, he fishes. He's a man's man, more like a more casual person like me. How does this committee and what they're deciding determine whether or not people can use the forest here in Idaho?
Well, what it's going to do now these we have some old plans. So Salmon Forest and Chalice Forest used to be separate, and in 1987 a salmon plan was written. So this is 30 years ago, and the Chalice Forest plan was written in 1988. So here we're trying to update the plan, and what we need to is work off the basis, I believe, of those plans. And by law, you're really supposed to. And the sad thing is, no one has seen these two plans. Right now, if you were to go into the Forest Service office in Salmon, you'd be hard-pressed to find a salmon plan because since the alarm has been raised that people need to get involved, they've cleared them all out. I mean, they have taken these plans, and people are studying them. They're talking about, in these old plans, it says in Salmon, they're supposed to develop about 20 miles of road a year for access to cut wood, for grazing, when people are grazing, that they can get back to their grazing allotments. And same thing with the Chalice plan. We were supposed to be opening 12.5 miles of road a year. None of this has happened. Now, I mean, these plans literally were not followed for the past 30 years. Because of the environmental movement, the Forest Service pretty much went to a hands-off management policy. And that's why we're in the situation we are today with these fires. And, even now, I've had people from Leadore call me and say, Representative Moon, I can't get my firewood.
Now, I'm with you on Leadore and everything else, but, I won't speak for real. We're fairly selfish down here. How does this impact us?
Well, how it's going to impact you is it's going to deny you access. So if you use the Salmon Chalice for recreation, we have, at the recent meeting in November, the Forest Service put up a new maps of designating more wild and scenic rivers and also more wilderness. Well, if you know that we did have the Boulder White Cloud Wilderness locked up at a huge chunk of land for access for any type of multi-use purpose or beneficial use. And so what is happening now, and people who are local definitely realize that this forest travel plan has gated off a lot of areas they normally have gone to cut wood, places they've normally gone to go four-wheeling or to go hunting. And I know people think that they can just go anywhere on the forest grounds, but they cannot. And it's really been evident this year just at the amount of people who couldn't get their fuel wood.
So really you're saying that people will be denied access to the lands?
Yes. If they are not involved with this planning process, and it is stated in that plan that these roads need to be opened for access or for fighting fires, then we will be denied access.
And really, no one knows about it. You stumbled onto this.
Yeah, and actually, I did. And, I try to keep up with I've got 5 counties and 5 local papers, and you try to keep up with what's going on. And there's normally postings of these meetings. And there was in the formation of the collaborative and a couple of Forest Service meeting postings. But I'll tell you the truth, though. These folks in these rural communities have gone for 17 years fighting the Boulder White Cloud wilderness or monument. It was considered for both. They're give out. They fought. They write petitions. They write letters. They give up their personal time, a lot of it, and then it's like as if the die is already cast and it's already going to become one or the other. So they feel like their input isn't valid. However, by law, and we are under a new administration, the Trump administration does want to see beneficial use, multi-use on these forests. They want to treat the forest more like crops. They want to remove the old and dead and let other trees thrive, create better ecosystems for the animals. So what we have are some people who are under the old administration still following those policies instead of adjusting to the policies of our new Trump administration.
Dorothy Moon is with us, State Representative Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Switching gears a little, a lot of news out of the legislature. You have the front page of the paper, a young man being investigated, young legislator saying he misinterpreted stuff. You as a young lady, you as a female, what's the attitude like in the legislature concerning the concern over sexual assault and harassment? I mean, do you find it a friendly work environment?
I think the gentleman that you're referencing, Representative Holtzclaw, I will tell you my office is a stone's throw away from his, and he has never been nothing but a gentleman to me. Very polite. I have never seen anything off-colored come from him, very professional, and I'm saddened by this because it seems like anything can be misconstrued as sexual harassment, and I just don't see it. But I was talking to my husband about it when this came into the limelight. There won't be any sexual harassment with me because I would have to, I would stop it. I'll put it that way. I would stop it. We're not even going there. In my personal life, I would have no problem stopping that from happening. But it is too bad, and I think a lot of this is being way over exaggerated. I can't believe some of the things that are coming out and being considered sexual harassment. And I truthfully do not listen to the mainstream media, and I haven't seen the paper today. I hate to say it. I've been so busy with going around and bringing folks up to speed on getting involved in, these Forest Service plans.
No, I'm with you. No, it was a couple days ago, but it seemed odd to me that and again, I didn't mention the gentleman's name. I figured that he needed a fair shake. But he, and again, a lot of this stuff is redacted. He said to someone, have we met? And how do you use Snapchat? And I'm thinking to myself, and I really, and you're much more diplomatic than I am, Representative Move. I don't want to go back into the past couple of years in the legislature, but there have been a lot of issues that could have warranted an investigation from the Attorney General, with recommendations from the Speaker that haven't happened. And it seems odd that this one would happen, number one, and number two, that it would be a front page of the paper. It just seems that some people are apparently on the in club or in the in club, and some people are not.
Okay, and you're probably right about that. There is definitely an in club and an out club.
And you're in the in club, right?
No, I don't know what club I'm in. I'm kind of my own person there. I try to just do what I truly do. Just try to work for the folks I represent, and that's my job. I try not to get down in the weeds and all of this other these personal issues. But if your representative is doing a good job, if you can call them and they can handle a situation that you're having trouble with, a state agency, that's what you're supposed to do. And I came on and reported about my involvement in the Bundy trials. They're my constituents. They needed some help. That's what you're supposed to do. So, it's too bad we have to focus on these sort of things instead of the actual tasks at hand, like our huge surplus and our huge increase in the budget last year. I mean, there's some other things I think we really need to be focusing on.
Two more quick things, then we'll let you get back to Christmas shopping.
All right.
At KIDO Talk Radio. Number one, the Bundys are not out of the woods yet. You have papers now in Nevada saying they want everything out in the open, which I think should be to begin with. What's the update with them, ma'am?
Yes, and this is a really good point, Kevin. I'm glad you brought it up. They are finding that the federal government had a list of folks that they wanted to see be taken out at that rally. If this is released to the press, I mean it is huge. It's all over social media now. I do look at that, and it does appear that there's a lot of information of conspiracy on the government side, which is bad. I mean, this is horrible, and it's just showing that who has really been damaged in this. It's been the Bundys all the way through. And again, I can't tell you and your listeners. It is so important that you see this firsthand. If the trial does resume on the 20th, if they do call the jury and it gets back to the trial, I think it's going to be really short-lived, and it's going to be mistrial will probably be called. My fear is if that evidence is sealed. And if it's sealed and locked away, and the American people never have the opportunity to understand what could have happened there, and how big this conspiracy was to go after these people and get the last ranching family out of that portion of the state, that would be a travesty. The truth has to come out. And I'll tell you, the Las Vegas Review-Journal has been very open on this entire case. They're there. They've met with the detainees. They have met with the families. They know that this is a travesty. All
right. Again, we're up against it. So note we have Jody, who's Facebook messaging me. Thank you for having Representative Moon on. The Forest Service has closed the snowmobile trail from Lowman to Stanley for the winter. I can't believe to tell you how hard this is going to hit small businesses in the Lowman area.
Yeah.
She applauds your efforts to get constituents involved. And we'll have you on again, and we'll continue to raise awareness as we, continue to cover this and get ready for the legislative session. It is important. People need to know what's going on, especially how much people love the outdoors. Finally, any take on the governor's race?
No, I don't. But, I've worked with Lieutenant Governor Little. I have met Mr. Alquist. But, again, Raul Labrador helped me get that Bundy letter into Sessions' hands, and that did mean a lot to me because that helped to shine a light on that issue and start moving things to get these men released. Or some people have told me that, so I hope it did, with those 53 legislator signatures on there with mine. That meant a lot. So I think and looking at the issues that we deal with, the Salmon Chalice Forest and Chief Cook at the federal level, I need somebody I can work with who can help me address these issues at a federal level. And Raul Labrador did help me a lot there, and I do appreciate it.
You've got this politician thing down.
Do I? Thanks, Kevin. I've been working on it for a year.
Well, you enjoy Christmas, and we look forward to having you on during the legislative season and after as well, man, before and after.
Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Have a good day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.
Representative Dorothy Moon joining us. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. So the state and this secret committee moving in to deny people access to the land. Nobody's reporting it. Thank you, Representative Moon. Much more on that. Plus, it was a sticky wicky day on Capitol Hill yesterday, and if you're chilly, I promise you between now and 8 o'clock, the testimony between Rosenstein, and Jim Jordan and Congressman Labrador will fire you up. First, traffic and weather together. And quickly, let's go to Doug in Mountain Home at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Yeah, hey, Kevin. I was just listening to this gal from up there out of Salmon. And I called into my representative this year, earlier. I've been in the woods all my life here. I felled timber for 26 years. And just exactly what she's saying has been going on. And that's why I called 2 senators, 2 of my representatives, and you're talking to blind ears. I mean, or deaf ears. They're just, I don't know, people, you need people, like she said, the people need to get involved in this. And you go out in the forest, people, get out of Boise, go out in the forest and look at it, what they've done to it. They have destroyed it with fires. I mean, literally destroyed our natural resources, and nobody is accountable for it, Kevin. It's just like what you're hearing. I can't understand how they're getting away with all of this crap that we hear them doing up there in that den of thieves, you know, where there's no law. Who's accountable for what? Nothing. I mean, the FBI, who's their boss? They're summoned to bring out freaking, Congress wants to see papers, and they just shrug your shoulders and go, basically up yours. It's what they're doing to us here, Kevin. I mean, you got grasshopper cops from BLM, and you got pine cone cops from the Forest Service out here, and they restrict you from going nowhere, just like the woman said, people calling in. I cut firewood, I burn fire, I sell it. They burnt our forest, and I got to buy a damn wood permit for burnt wood that they have burnt. You go up here to Prairie, where I lived most of my life, and the state and the private logged every bit of that burnt wood. The state planted over 150 million new trees. What the Forest Service do in our district here in Mountain Home, they never logged a stick of it, Kevin. It's all fallen over, and they have the audacity to say, like, the way they're closing these roads off, it is public safety. The trees are falling over, you can't go out there. And nobody's accountable for it, period. And they're getting paid mine and yours tax dollars. And your representatives are just, except for this woman I just heard, thank you, whatever your name was. I mean,
that's just Representative Dorothy Moon, and we'll look. She made us aware of this, so we're gonna do our very best to get the word out here, Doug.
And I hope, because people, you're losing tax.
Doug,
that's where all this lumber money went to. All right.
Yes, thank you, sir.
I could go on and on and on.
I agree. We will continue to take your calls. Doug in Mountain Home, thank you for joining us. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Music brought to you by our friend Ray Amaya. Let's go to Keith on the bench. Keith, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah, good morning, Kevin Miller. I lived in Idaho most of my whole life, and I've lived on the Boise bench my whole life, so certainly have a history here. That representative lady you just had on, she's awesome. And, my deal is I used to love going, like in the early 80s, mid-80s, love going up to Stanley. Everything was green and beautiful. And I've just watched it overgrow and all these trees begin to die. And then we started seeing these huge forest fires, and it's just a shame, and I did have a tree expert friend for a part of my life, and he said it's real simple. He's like, these trees need to be thinned. And you know why? Because if there are too many trees, there isn't enough water to go around. And so because the trees are competing for water and they need to be thinned. And then with these environmentalists, like basically stopping logging or restricting it severely, the forest is just massively overgrown from what we can see. And, I'm not the only one. I see these old timers who live in these great mountain houses on TV getting interviewed when a fire's right by their place. And they're like 90-year-old guys going, we have never seen fires this hot. There's so much fuel, dead fuel, in this forest from these environmental policies that have restricted logging. That it's just terrifying, And so I feel horrible for those people. But here I am on a cushy Boise bench house, don't have to worry about forest fires. But yeah, my days of wanting to buy a cabin up there, oh no. Now that the forests are in such horrible shape, I wouldn't buy a place up there even if I could afford it, which I can't.
So Keith, as someone who has lived here and been a part of the growth of this state and folks coming in from the outside and the government and everything else, you've got people that are representatives, you've got people that in the executive branch that are farmers and ranchers. What are they doing? They would know about this issue better than you or me. Why do they allow this to happen?
Well, just my opinion. I'm a little bit biased. I'm a patriot. I'm conservative. So I've always been kind of locking heads with environmentalists and liberals my whole life. But, to me, the liberal mindset, which vote in Boise and they elect people on their side, well, their whole vision of the forest is to keep people out. Well, when you do that, unfortunately, again, the forests overgrow and then burn down. So they think they're protecting the forest, but they're not. They're actually hurting the forest severely. And even down here in the Boise Valley, we get to breathe smoke all summer, And to me, it's if you just got in there and had a healthy logging industry, we'd really cut down on some of these raging fires and it would clean up the air in the valley. And, I just think some of the liberal mindset of people are just totally wrong. They like to come up and say, we need to vote Democratic because man-made global warming is burning down the western forests. And people like me respond with, no, the reason why the forests are burning down is you restrict logging. And so it's just a constant battle, and so no one's totally right, but again, a conservative guy like me says, why don't we get some logging crews up there and clean out that forest a little bit? And they just don't want that. They don't want human access in the forest. So I vote conservative and they vote liberal, and all the politicians line up and battle each other all the time. And so anyhow,
well, it seems to be there's collusion.
I do think my new president, Trump, is going to fix a little bit of this for us if he can,
right.
If he can get it done. But boy, does he have a lot of enemies lined up against him just for trying to give human beings a chance to get out there and log a little bit or something,
Exactly.
Get what I'm saying.
All right, Keith, thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Citizen Gary from Nampa with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Citizen Gary.
Well, good morning, Kevin.
Oh, it's been a while.
The Boise aspect is that I was born in the 30s in Boise. But the thing of it is that to help out Dorothy Moon,
yes,
it's obvious she hasn't done sufficient research within regard of where the forests come from.
The trees?
That is correct. And I'll just do two quick reference points to which will assist her considerably. First, 1907, Idaho put a legislative resolution back to Congress within regard of the proclamations that had been made within regard to the forest. As far as the legality of such has already been decided, it's obvious she does not know that in 1987, the Utah Division of Lands versus the United States, where Sandra Day O'Connor wrote the opinion in the matter, everything within the boundaries of a state belongs to the state. That includes all animals. That includes the trees, the forest and fauna. But people do not know that they presume that the Forest Service controls. The Forest Service doesn't control anything except what it's allowed to do by the candy store to the various states.
Okay,
so
where are we? So where are we going with this, Citizen Gary?
The aspect of it is that the people of the state itself controls the forest. Everything that is being done, the shutting down, etc., through the grizzly bears, the pathways, etc., etc. All the shutdown is merely in a managerial until such time as where the people, it's not a question of sitting at the board and attempting to. No, it's the difference between controlling. It's the same thing as what you was mentioning earlier. I happened to hear your program this morning and the aspect of the taxation. With the exception of Hank, I doubt seriously if there's any one of your listeners that could tell you the difference between Boise City, Boise, or the city of Boise.
That's a good one, Citizen Gary. We appreciate that insight. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. But I think there are a lot of people that could, but we'll figure that out. Too Much Truth joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Too Much Truth.
Good morning, Kevin. I could just show up and throw up on this issue. I don't even know where to start, but the Forest Weeks Act that created the National Forest stated that the only thing that the Forest Service was there for was to help the people extract the natural resources just in a prudent way. And they've converted that into you don't even get to touch the forest. And even if you go cut down dead trees, you have to pay the government to do it. All of that is criminal. All of it's illegal. And we keep operating on the premise that the government somehow cares about what the law says. They don't. Another thing is the primary reason. People always fight the ancillaries. It's maddening to me. The primary reason why the government keeps people out of the forest is because they want only corporations to make money, and you have to work for the corporations. If everybody could just go up in the woods and cut down a couple trees and take them to the mill and get paid, then anybody would be able to go make a living like they're supposed to be able to. Those are our trees. They're not the government's trees. They are the people's trees. And we should be able to just go up there and cut down a couple trees if we want to build a house or make a chair or get some firewood or do anything without these permission slips called permits that you have to pay extortion fees for. It's all a lie. So if everybody keeps operating on the premise that the government follows the law, you are just fooling yourselves. I mean, you're just wasting time. I don't know what we can do. I've picked a fight with the Forest Service and the U.S. Department of the Interior saying that they don't have the right to regulate miners on mining ground. And they wrote me back a letter and they just said, look, we don't care what the law says. We're going to do it this way anyway. So what I've done is I've applied directly to Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of the Interior, to convert a large portion of land in Idaho, a couple thousand acres, into a mining preserve. And he has the ability to do this under statute, even though it's still illegal. I mean, the miner has the right to go do whatever they want. But it's sitting on his desk right now. I mailed it last week. And so the Secretary of the Interior right now has the ability, well, the President of the United States has to sign it also, but those are the only two people. And they can convert land that is better suited for mining purposes than forest purposes back into public domain, which means it will not be under the jurisdiction of the Forest Service or the BLM. And so the only law that will apply will be the mining law. And so this is just the only way that I've thought to pick a fight with the government and gain back and scratch back a little bit of liberty and freedom. But please, people, don't think that the government operates under the law. All they do is they'll take a grant or a piece of legislation and they'll wrap it with administrative law and muddy the waters so much that everybody is tricked into the idea that they somehow have authority, but they don't. The Forest Weeks Act only says, keep the people from cutting all the trees off of one hill. Spread them out, help them out, and let them extract their own natural resources that they own just in a prudent way. So please stop arguing the ancillaries if you possibly can.
Well, that's for our entertainment and information. Too Much Truth, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Mike Tracy, who joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Kevin. Just a few items that I'd like to touch on. Back in January of 1988, it'll be 30 years next month, I started working on these issues, and we already started to see some of the environmental movement in terms of the filing of the lawsuits. A study was done by the University of Idaho in 1991 and showed that 44% of the gross regional product of the Panhandle came from timber sales. Today, it's probably well under 10%. Almost all of the timber cutting is done now on state and private land. And another fact and figure that is a lot of people are not aware of that really negatively affects the state of Idaho is the stumpage fees that would go to the rural counties. Because when you listen to the numbers, 62 to 64% of Idaho is federal ground. The number I always used to hear and use was 64% is federal land. 25% of the stumpage fees would go back to the counties. And because there became so many restrictions on timber cutting across the state and across the West, Senator Larry Craig and Senator Ron Wyden passed a bill that replaced those stumpage fees at that 25% level because the counties could not operate without it. Some counties have as much as 95%, as high as 95% federal land. So there's not much private land to operate off of. And so you can see where the dilemma comes. And those are just some facts and figures that I've seen over the years. And I've watched it happen. And back in the early to mid 90s, I had timber and forest management people telling me that they based on what they were seeing, they would see nearly all of the lumber mills close up in Idaho, and we've seen probably 90% of them have shut down since the early 90s.
And the beat goes on, and we see the fires continuing to grow.
And I've seen fires nonstop. The first big fire that I remember covering was in that first year, 1988, was the Let It Burn policy, when half of Yellowstone in August of 1988 burned half of Yellowstone to the ground. And it's funny, I used to take my children to Yellowstone in the 80s, and they loved it. And the last time I took them was in 91 or 92. I think it was 1991 or 92. And it was just black toothpicks. And they said, we don't want to go anymore. And they're now adults. But it was funny hearing their version of it. They were probably 6 and 8 at the time. So they were not really interested in looking at black burnt toothpicks.
Well, somebody needs to do something about it, Mike, is this the role of state government here?
Well, I certainly applaud efforts to do that. The real challenge is that you have burrowed in the bureaucratic machine that is so hard to dissemble, and that's very challenging. You've got decades of presidents allowing this bureaucracy to build up, and the environmental community has placed their people very, very strategically. And when you look at environmental studies and forest management, it's not about actual forest management. It's other studies. I mean, people understand you have to thin and manage forests. People they used to use the clear cut pictures all the time to really encourage people to be against cutting forests and going in and cutting trees. Well, that's not what is done. Clear cuts, and there's actually places where clear cuts have done good in places, but usually in a forest sale, when it's proposed, is one where they go in and do a selective cut and a managed cut. And that's what the state of Idaho does with their timber program. And you can look at their timber program. It's run very efficiently, and it's been very profitable. And it has done they've done a great job over there. And if they can do it with 5.1% of Idaho is state acres, the acreage that we were given, those dollars go to the school endowment. And that 5.1% it'd be great if that was, 15 or 20.1%, because then we would have more money to go to the schools.
Mike Tracy, we appreciate it. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. Blessed to be part of your day. Don't forget, Tuesday, we invite everybody to the Broadcast Center for the Kevin Miller Christmas Party. Oh, it's back, people. Time for traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's go to Barbara in Nampa quickly at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. There's just something I would like to say that I would like you to look into, is that they announced on the news that seniors were going to get 2 or 3% cost of living raise of Social Security. And I've noticed for the last 2 or 3 years that the amount that I receive in my account has not gone up a penny, but Medicare Part B insurance, they've taken more out, that exact same amount each year.
Barbara, we're on it. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. KIDO Talk Radio.